Wait, who are you talking about? Yeah. I'll check. You want me to go buy them? Yeah, this is 2 more long. Ask first. I'm gonna go get some. Wait, hold on. I probably have 2. At least.
Right. But they can hear mine.
That mic is live, so it's better.
I mean, if they can get started, we can.
Oh, that's strong.
This is having my making it.
Okay. The people who are obviously.
Hey, everybody. How's it going? Where's it going? Good to see you. I'm here as a constituent this time. Hi. Good to see you. Oh, double A's, yeah. For now, but it's just this mic all the way over there, so it's not.
Okay.
So yeah, Zoom can hear you now better than.
Got it.
Hello, hello.
John, this is working now. Okay. Thank you for your patience, everyone. And it's working. We have our applicant from the Met, Brett, Henry. Feel free to unmute yourselves and hopefully we can hear you.
Hi, can you hear us?
Yes, thank you.
I'm slightly scared about what the size of my face is on that screen, but luckily I can't see it. So we will get started. Henry, do you want to just test your mic to make sure?
Yeah, can everyone hear me?
Are we good to start, Chairman?
Yes,
Okay,
please
great.
begin.
Okay, and we will go as quickly as we can. I know that you're very busy tonight. So it's nice to be with you all. My name is Brett Guyard. I'm the head of capital projects at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I'm here tonight with some of my colleagues from the Met, as well as Henry Miller, principal at Beyer Blinderbell Architects and Planners, who will be sharing the presentation. We will try to get through this in 10 minutes. We're here to present our proposed strategy and approach to wayfinding for public signage on the exterior of our Fifth Avenue frontage, as well as the interior of the Great Hall. In 2023, we came before you all to present the addition of 4 digital displays in the Great Hall and receive feedback during our public hearing at Landmarks that the Great Hall had become visually noisy with signage. We agreed and we listened to the feedback. And so we've been working since then to establish a proposal for a wayfinding strategy that would allow for a unified and consistent system of signage for our interior and exterior arrival locations. Henry, we can go to the next slide. Thanks. Accessibility for our visitors is critical to the Met's mission. We talk about it with you all every time we come before you with a project. And as you all know, we have many projects underway, including a new fully accessible entry at 83rd Street, which was approved by Landmarks last year. And we want our visitors to be able to find this new entry as well as our other projects. Our goal is to continue to welcome the millions of visitors that come to the Met every year, but offer clear and consistent wayfinding, entry, exit, and circulation. So the signage proposal aims to establish a new system, a clear system that will be adaptable to the museum's needs, respectful of the architecture, as well as remove the visual clutter in many areas that have accrued over time. So with that, I'll hand it over to Henry.
Thank you, Brett. I'm Henry Miller, principal at Beyer Blinderbell Architects, and I'm going to take you through this presentation, and we'll take questions at the end if you have any. So we're here today because this building, the Met Museum of Art, is a landmark. It was designated in 1967 as an exterior landmark, and the interior of the Great Hall and the Grand Stair was designated in 1977. So the changes we're making inside the Great Hall as well as to the exterior for signage, both are landmarks items. The Great Hall is an iconic space for New York City and for visitors from around the world. And you know, it's a piece of architecture that I think we really want to be careful about and respond to with this signage plan that Brett described. Looking at the Great Hall over time, it's definitely seen a lot of uses. It's adapted over time, and it, you know, the amount of visitors has only increased. The amount of signage has only increased over time. So we're trying to address that and figure out how to do that as respectfully as we can to the architecture. Similarly, the exterior has seen changes over time as visitorship has increased. And you can see here through the 20th century and up to today, some scenes from the exterior. There are going to be 3 entrances to the museum. As Brett mentioned, there's an 81st Street entrance, the main entrance at 82nd Street, and there will be a new accessible entrance at 83rd Street. So part of this proposal is to sign that a new entry arrival sequence in a way that's clear. There are also 3 main entrances into the museum off the Great Hall, the 3 colonnades to the north, south, and west. So we did pick up on some of these relationships of a power of 3s as we worked through the design. So, you know, there's been a number of different solutions for visitor experience, for wayfinding, for visitor orientation in the Great Hall. It's evolved over time. Technology has evolved over time. Things have come and gone. So we want to make sure that what we're doing today is correct to the moment, but also adaptable to the future. Currently, there is a lot of variety of signage. You can see a selection here in the Great Hall, a lot of different sizes, shapes, locations to try to find things. It can be very confusing to the visitor. And as I mentioned, visitorship has only increased. So oftentimes it's very crowded. There's clumping at key arrival points, all problems that we're seeking to solve with the signage proposal. There's a lot of information. It's a huge museum. Not all of the information can be delivered with the current signage program, so we're looking to rectify that. Also doing some research of peer institutions for precedents from other museums. How are they approaching this problem? Noting that pylons and objects in space that can deliver information up close, but also seen from a distance, can be very effective, and also can stand away from the architecture without distracting from it. There are a lot of different types of visitors to the museum. We need to be able to speak to somebody from around the world who maybe doesn't speak English, as well as a New Yorker who knows exactly what they want to find. So how do you put together a system that can speak to all of those different types of visitors? So that was really the research. And then, how do we start to understand the space, and how do we start to figure out zones to locate signage? Thinking about the architecture, we developed some horizontal bands, where we might hang signs up high, seen from a distance, and where you may have smaller signs down lower that are able to deliver information with more specificity. The materiality in the Great Hall is very important. We want to be respectful to that and respond to that. Limestone, terrazzo floors, some other marble and granite. This is a look at some of the mounting solutions that are currently deployed in the Great Hall. Not that consistent, not that respectful of the architecture, some patches and things that weren't executed that well. So we do want to go back with a signage program that's able to incorporate into the architecture more carefully. So the existing signage in the Great Hall, this diagram shows all the different signage that's deployed to try to guide the visitor through the space and into the museum. And in plan, gives you a sense of the number of signs. And then our proposal, which you can see the new signs in this axon, with the pylon showing up here, which is the triangular shaped solid, and we'll get into what that's doing. We're also introducing a sign at the information desk. Those are highlighted because those will contain digital components. And we're also looking at replacing the banners, which is shown here. This is the proposed plan, trying to be much more targeted about where we place it, responsive to the architecture and the rhythm of the columns. So we'll go into that in a little more detail. This is the signage family, what we're calling the group of signage types for the Great Hall. You can see that they are of a family as far as the color and the typography, and they're falling into those bands that I mentioned, banners up high, more detailed information down below. You can see we're integrating a sign or a digital component into the information desk, which will be touch screen and fully accessible for a deep dive into the museum map, or maybe other languages, with an audio loop component for people who are hard of hearing. The pylon, which is freestanding, and also will have more detailed information, and a digital display screen, which would be static, but maybe cycling through, the latest and greatest exhibits. And then as you go to the right here, we're getting into what we're called directional signage. Those are more specific to walking through the museum, taking a right here, going to a specific gallery. The palette, the colors and the materiality, the matte red is being utilized, as well as a white for contrast. And then we're looking at either a light bronze or a dark bronze finish for any metals, which is very appropriate to the age of the wing and the architecture at the Met. So that's the full family there. The banners, we're looking at a slightly modified proportion of the banner, something a little more slender but longer, that we think fits better into the colonnade proportions, and actually provides more information for a hierarchy of more space for a hierarchy of information. And then some of the other sign types here in a little bit more detail, gives you a sense of the scale. Again, trying to be respectful of the architecture, stone coursing, proportion, etc. And the directional signages, sign types. So some 3D views. This is looking south, so this would be looking towards the Greek and Roman. looking west up the grand stair, showing the family of signage, and then looking north towards Egyptian. So these are some of the banner attachments that are currently there. We're trying to really clean that up and find a place to mount the banner hardware into the stone that's very discreet and wouldn't damage the surface of the stone. So this is a rod that we're able to get into this, actually the gap there between the capital and the underside of the soffit, as well as a very minimal frame for the banner. We are looking at a subtle backlighting to the banner that can actually be incorporated into that frame. This would allow for some additional legibility from a distance in the Great Hall. Going now into the variety of directional signage in the Great Hall, and some of the sign types kind of within that family. So this is the pylon, a little bit more detail, being very conscientious of the architecture and how to put something like this into the Great Hall. We picked up on the triangles that exist in the terrazzo floor, and we're tucked into the corner there, using the bronze, as I mentioned, which is very appropriate to the other metals in the Great Hall. And this really is where you can come and you can find some detailed information about which of the portals to take to start your journey through the museum. Some more detail on the pylon. This is the information kiosk display, so you can see how somebody might be able to interact with that. This is supplemental to the guides who sit at the information desk, kind of a iconic moment for the to be able to get information there. So we're looking to supplement that and provide more accessibility, more languages, the ability to have an auditory loop for people who are hard of hearing. And then the directional signs, which are intended to let people know which way to go as they start to leave the Great Hall. Again, integrated into the stone coursing and whatnot of the space. An elevator sign type. Just noting that we're relocating the World War II plaque. Because it's a landmark, we need to be very thorough with all the changes we're making. And then launching from the interior into the exterior, we have a similar signage family. You can see that below, picking up on the same met red, banners up high, and some pylon forms down at the ground level. Same story at the exterior, really a lot of signage, a proliferation of signage in the current state. You can see that here, and trying to really clean that up with targeted signage in the future state, in the proposed state. Again, same story at the exterior, a lot of different types of signs. The bands, we also read those onto the exterior, similar to what we did on the interior, picking up on some of the key horizontal datums of the architecture, the existing signage, and going into some of the proposed types now. The banner, there are some stanchions at each entrance to complement the banner, and then some pylons out on the plaza to help guide the pedestrian towards the appropriate entrances. There are 3 entrances. They each will offer some different amenities. Some are fully accessible. So we want to make sure that the visitor from the plaza can understand where they want to go. There's a lot of visual activity on the plaza. We think it's important to bring some signage out to this area so that you're able to start to understand where you need to go without needing to, kind of try to search it out through the trees there. This is the 83rd Street entrance, which has been approved by Landmarks. The existing controlled entrance there will be expanded to restore the original 3 entrances. We were, I think, at this community board not too long ago to describe this project, so we want to make sure that we support it appropriately with signage, and we'll see some of the signage we're proposing for that purpose here, with the banner at the top and the pylon form, letting visitors know what to find inside this entrance at the street level. A very similar approach here at 81st Street. And at 82nd Street, the banner and then 2 pylon forms that would be counterweighted and sit between the three doors. Again, looking at attachments for the signage, trying to be very discreet, very respectful of the architecture, figuring out a way to integrate this carefully. This is the existing condition. We're looking at something that would actually bring the mounting frame to the backside of the sign and really be a clean integration into that stone panel there. This is the backside of that, showing how we can attach the hardware behind the frame. Again, some of the existing signage types. There are kiosks or pylon boxes. You can see in the photo on the left, they're really too close to the curb to be useful for pedestrians. And then the pylons at the doors are helpful, but they're hard to see from the plaza, from the sidewalk. So we're proposing another pylon really at the sidewalk. This is also triangularly shaped, similar to the pylon at the interior. We are looking at a digital screen here with static imagery, similar to the pylon at the interior. That screen would face towards the museum, so it wouldn't be something that people would see from across the street. Trying to be respectful in that regard, but this would be a key component to guiding people from the sidewalk towards the museum, understanding which entrance to go to. So you can see here again, just a lot of visual noise. Important to have something that the visitor can see and can start to guide their visit towards an entrance. For example, here at 81st Street or at 83rd Street. Part of this holistic signage family, we're also proposing to replace the parking sign, which is further south, in a design that matches the rest of the proposed signage. And I think that is the proposal.
Much. Any questions from the committee? Any questions from non-committee members? Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak on this item? If there's anyone on Zoom who would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand. Someone here wants to speak on this item in the audience? Thank you. Okay. Seeing no public interest in that. Sorry. Okay. Thank you, Jessie, if we could promote them. Jim, you can unmute yourself and you have 1 minute to speak on this Metropolitan Museum of Art item. Jim, if you could speak on this item, please. Jim, unfortunately, we're not hearing you. You can submit testimony to mno7@cb.nyc.gov. Thank you. Anyone from the committee have anything? Otherwise, I would suggest that we like this and are happy to approve it. If you have a question, do you have a question or testimony? You need to come up so that people on Zoom can hear you. No, you need to come use this mic if you want to speak on this item. Yes, this is an application before LPC. The charter requires that all LPC applications come to our community board first, which is why we're hearing it here. We'll make a committee vote, and then in November, the full board will vote as well. I think I had a motion on the table to, okay, call the question. Committee members in favor? Okay, 5 non-committee members in favor? Okay, so it passes 5-0-0-0, and non-committee will be 3-0-0-0. And to answer the most important question, the Metropolitan Museum of Art is in Central Park. Central Park is shared by all of the community boards that border it, even though it's clearly on the west side since it is west of Fifth Avenue. Okay, moving on to our next item. Before I do so,
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sorry, we're moving quickly this evening. Really appreciate you coming.
We'll sign off.
I will once again say that I have a lovely phone here with flowers in the background. If you lost your phone, feel free to come get it. Okay, our next item is 165 West 86th Street, aka 541 Amsterdam Avenue, West Park Presbyterian Church. There are a lot of people in the audience this evening, and there is a lot of passion, but we are going to be extremely respectful this evening. On my way here, I was extremely disheartened to see that some of the legally required public posting notices had been torn down and replaced with other flyers. That conduct is not acceptable, and I trust that it will not happen in the future. We do not, this evening, we are not looking for cheering or jeering. Please, if you're in the audience, be respectful of everyone who is speaking. The way that this will work this evening is that we are going to begin with a presentation from the applicant. They're getting set up here. After that, we will hear from some invited speakers. That will include elected officials, a representative from the organization Landmark West, and a representative from the organization The Center at West Park. After that, there will be an opportunity for members of the committee to ask the applicant questions and for the applicant to respond to what has been said. And if time permits, we will begin public comments. If you would like to speak on this item, you need to sign up via the QR codes that are distributed throughout the auditorium. They're also on the table outside the auditorium. You will have 2 minutes to speak, and I will just say right now, having looked at the list, we are not going to get to everyone this evening. On October 29th, we will have a second meeting, and we hope to take additional public comment then as well. However, if you do not have an opportunity to speak this evening and would like to provide testimony on this item, you can use the other QR code has a form to provide testimony to the committee. You can also email the community board mn07@stb.nyc.gov. I think that is everything. And with that, I will turn it over to our applicant.
Can we go to the next slide, please? Can everyone hear me okay? Closer? Okay, sorry. Good evening. My name is Valerie Campbell. I'm a partner in the Land Use Department at HSF Kramer. We are Land Use Counsel to the Church and the West Park Administrative Commission. Still? Sorry. Okay, tonight I am joined by Roger Leaf, the head of the West Park Administrative Commission, Rick Lefevre from Facade MD, Mohammed Raoul from Severud Associates, Toby Snyder from FX Collaborative, and Adam Wald from Appraisers and Planners. Other members of the team who will not be presenting but who will be available for questions are listed on the slide. Next slide. Community Board 7 reviewed the first hardship application submitted by the church in May of 2022. This application was subsequently reviewed by the Landmarks Preservation Commission at 3 public hearings and meetings. However, the church withdrew the application on January 5th, 2024, before the commission could rule on the application. It withdrew the application because the Center for West Park, a tenant, had refused to vacate the building in 2022, and litigation concerning the validity of the center's lease was still pending. The church prevailed in the litigation at both the New York Supreme Court and the Appellate Division in 2024, and on May 22nd, 2025, the Court of Appeals denied the center's motion to appeal these rulings. The center vacated the building on July 14th, 2025, and immediately relocated it to the Church of St. Paul and St. Andrew, 2 blocks away. The church then refiled its application with the Landmarks Commission on September 12th. The application that is before the community board is unusual. The commission is not being asked whether the proposed demolition in the new building is appropriate. Instead, the commission is ruling, or the committee is ruling on whether the church has satisfied the extraordinarily rigorous standards set forth in section 25309 of the Landmarks Law for the issuance of a notice to proceed with demolition on the grounds of financial hardship. In this case, the church must meet the statutory standards applicable to not-for-profits that own a landmark property that no longer supports the purposes of the not-for-profit, and who have a contract to sell the property to a for-profit purchaser that is contingent on a demolition approval. The availability of the hardship application is a necessary and constitutionally required component of the Landmarks Law. Since its establishment in 1965, the Landmarks Commission has only considered 19 hardship applications. The commission granted a not-for-profit hardship application for St. Vincent's Hospital in 2009 under the alternative judicial test for not-for-profits. More recently, in 2014, the commission denied a finding a hardship application for city and suburban homes, finding that the applicant had not demonstrated that the buildings could not earn a reasonable return as required under the Landmarks Law. In Board 7, there have only been 2 hardship applications. The Church of St. Paul and St. Andrew filed a hardship application under a different provision of the Landmarks Law in 1989, which was not approved, and there was a successful for-profit hardship application for 361 Central Park West that was approved. Next slide. We're here. Never mind. This application is proceeding under the statutory test for not-for-profits. For those members of the committee who have not already done so, I would recommend that they view Mark Silverman's presentation on the hardship statute as it applies to not-for-profits. To summarize the requirements of section 25309, a not-for-profit applicant must show that it is exempt from real estate taxation and that it is entered into a contract to sell the property, which is contingent on the issuance of a notice to proceed with demolition. The applicant must also show that the property would not be capable of earning a reasonable return, as such term is defined in the Landmarks Law. This definition is a return of 6% calculated on the assessed value of the landmark. The not-for-profit applicant must also show that the property has ceased to be suitable for its purposes. And finally, the prospective purchaser must show that it intends to demolish the building and construct a new building with reasonable promptness. We thank the committee in advance for its time and consideration and look forward to responding to your questions. Before I turn the presentation over to Roger Leaf, I would like to briefly locate the church and discuss the basis for its designation. Next. Oh, she's on, sorry, we can't see. The church is located on the northeast corner of 86 in Amsterdam. It is outside the historic district and opposite the Belnoord, another individual landmark. One of the things the church investigated when it was designated was the possibility of transferring the development rights to other sites. But there are no feasible receiving sites since it is surrounded by developed residential buildings. We revisited this option after the enactment of the City of Yes zoning amendments, but it still appears that there are no feasible receiving sites. Next. On the left side is a photograph of the church soon after its construction in 1890. On the right is a more recent photograph of the church. The sidewalk bridge has been up for more than 20 years in order to protect pedestrians from the deteriorating facade. Next. West Park looks like a single building, but it's actually 2 buildings. An earlier chapel built in 1885, designed by Leopold Edlitz, which is shown on the right, and the main sanctuary and the unifying facade designed by Henry Kilburn and constructed in 1889. The church was designated in 2010, and the church congregation opposed designation at that time based on the building's deteriorated condition and the congregation's lack of resources. Roger will now give a brief description of how the burden of maintaining this building has impacted the congregation and depleted all of its resources. And he will explain why this application satisfies the findings that the commission must make in order to issue a notice to proceed with demolition based on hardship.
Next slide, please. Good evening. I am Roger Leaves, speaking on behalf of West Park Church. The focus of our presentation today is on whether the application that West Park submitted to the Landmarks Commission meets the statutory requirements for a hardship, which would allow for the sale of the Landmark Church to Alchemy Properties and the demolition of the building. In her introduction, Val Campbell laid out 5 criteria that must be met for the grant of a hardship. 3 are factual determinations that are not in dispute. Only 2 must be proven and are the focus of our presentation this evening. They are whether the building is suitable for the mission of the church as the owner, and whether the building is capable of earning a reasonable return if it were owned by someone else. In our presentation, we will show that the cost to maintain the building for use by the church is in the tens of millions of dollars. Building repairs have already consumed all of the struggling congregation's resources, and in 2020, the congregation voted to sell the building to avoid being driven into bankruptcy. We will also show that, based on the very specific criteria in the statute, if the building were sold to a new owner, not only would it be incapable of earning a reasonable return, it would not even be capable of generating a positive return. This technical calculation was previously confirmed in 2023 by an analyst undertaken by an independent team of experts engaged by the Landmarks Commission. We believe we can demonstrate that we meet both these criteria, and under the Landmarks statute, the Landmarks Commission should give a determination for a hardship. Next slide, please. If approved, the church would lose its spiritual home of over 140 years, but it would gain 10,000 square feet of state-of-the-art worship and community space in a new building. It would also receive cash proceeds of $33 million, which would be used to repay its debts and establish an endowment to support new pastoral leadership and its ongoing mission on the Upper West Side. But the bulk of this money, 25 to 30 million, would go to the Presbytery of New York City as a restricted gift to endow the West Park Presbyterian Church Social Justice Fund to carry on the legacy of this storied congregation. The fund would be managed by the Presbytery and used exclusively for grants to Presbyterian churches in support of community-based programs in some of the city's most underserved neighborhoods. The gifts specifically list food pantries, soup kitchens, shelters, seed money for affordable housing initiatives, as well as others. The Social Justice Fund would more than triple the Presbytery's funding to provide assistance to its member churches and would be by far the largest gift to the Presbytery in its 280-year history. It would be transformative to the Presbytery's mission at a time when the funding for many of these services is under attack. Next slide, please. The denial of the hardship would not necessarily save the building, but it would almost certainly mean the end of a storied 140-year-old congregation. It would still need to sell the building, and as a landmark, its development potential would be severely restricted. Any new owner would have to spend $40 to $50 million to meet current zoning and life safety codes before it could be occupied. the building would continue to decline until a buyer could be found and repairs could be made, and the sidewalk bridge surrounding the building would likely remain in place for the foreseeable future. Next slide, please. The Presbytery of New York City is a community of 88 Presbyterian churches and 10 worshiping communities in the 5 boroughs of New York City. It is one of 19 presbyteries that make up the Presbyterian Synod of the Northeast and is one of the most diverse presbyteries in the country. The Presbytery of New York City has no ownership interest in the West Park building. All Presbyterian churches are owned by their congregations, which are solely responsible for their upkeep. In fact, the presbytery has almost no funds to assist churches with maintenance issues. It has only a small fund for this purpose with an annual budget of about $100,000 for all 88 churches. While the presbytery must approve property sales, any decision to sell real property can only be made by a vote of the congregation. In the case of West Park, the church's leadership and congregation unanimously approved the sale of the building to Alchemy in March of 2022, and the presbytery approved the sale by a vote of 91-3 in June of 2022. Next slide, please. As previously stated, the West Park congregation has been worshiping at this location for over 140 years. In the 1980s, it had a membership of nearly 250 members and was active in a wide range of social justice issues, particularly during the AIDS crisis. During this time, the building, particularly its facade, began to develop maintenance issues. These issues began to take precedence over the mission of the church, and consequently, the membership began to decline. By 2000, the congregation could no longer keep up with building maintenance costs, forcing the sale of the church's other assets and the loss of its pastor in 2017. In 2020, the congregation felt it had no choice but to vote to sell the building. Since then, it hasn't even had the resources to pay all its operating expenses and has had to rely on loans from the presbytery to pay for insurance and other expenses. By June of this year, the church had less than $600 in the bank and was over $200,000 in debt. Next slide, please. Even before Landmark, there had been multiple studies to assess the condition of the building and the unaffordable cost of repairs. In 2020, a sidewalk shed had to be erected around the church to protect pedestrians from falling shards of loose sandstone. When the church was landmarked in 2010, over the objections of the congregation, the building was empty and in disrepair with no heat or running water. The sidewalk shed had been up for over a decade, and the congregation had almost no financial resources to maintain the building. A year later, the Landmarks Conservancy commissioned a study that concluded that it would cost $14.6 million just to restore the church's facade. Adjusting for inflation, that would be the equivalent of over $20 million today, without taking into account the continued deterioration of the soft sandstone facade. In 2021, the building had deteriorated to the point where it had to be closed for emergency repairs. In the last 3 years, the church has received 10 DOB violations related to the facade, which would take millions of dollars to cure. Next slide, please. In 2021, when the West Park Administrative Commission was established to work with the the building, one of its first steps was to find a developer with experience working on landmark buildings. Alchemy was the clear choice because of its track record and experience working on the restoration and repurposing of landmark buildings. They assembled a team of experts, worked with the church with the goal of developing a plan to retain and restore as much of the building as possible. The team spent months analyzing the condition of the building and its potential for restoration, and concluded that the condition issues were such that there simply wasn't a cost-effective way to save even part of the building. Reluctantly, we came to the conclusion that the only solution was to replace the entire building with a new structure. I would now like to turn the presentation over to Richard Lefevre to discuss his company's analysis of the condition of the church's facade.
Thank you, Roger. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to present the results of my examination of the exterior walls of this building. My name is Lefevre, president of Facade MD. I am a licensed professional. Next slide, please. I'm a licensed professional engineer with over 30 years experience in the assessment, preservation, restoration of building exteriors, primarily here in New York, but also throughout the eastern half of the U.S. Test. We also performed investigative floor openings in 4 locations where individual stones were removed to determine underlying conditions.
Sorry. I did you dirty.
As noted in these photos, there are large areas of surface deterioration at both the fine-grained ornamental stone and at areas within the field of the walls. The most common mechanism of sandstone deterioration is freeze-thaw action. The stone surface is porous, allowing rainwater to penetrate. Each time the outside temperature passes through below 32 degrees Fahrenheit, the penetrated water freezes and expands approximately 8 to 10% in volume, cracking and pulverizing the surrounding stone material. The cracked and pulverized stone material allows additional water into the stone surfaces, aggravating and extending the problems. Unfortunately, the number of times ambient temperature crosses above and below degrees F in New York City is particularly high, resulting in a large number of these expansions. In addition, the binder materials in sandstone are susceptible to being dissolved in weak acids, such as our local rainwater with its acidic pH level. That process also increases the surface porosity of this sandstone, creating additional deterioration. Next slide, please. Our examination showed that this building's sandstone is base bedded, meaning the stone was set with layers oriented vertically rather than horizontal orientation. As a result, large portions of stone layers are vulnerable to separation rather than small flakes and fragments. These conditions are evident throughout the facade, including higher sections accessed during our boom lift examination. Next slide, please. As you can see, the loss of surface area in the fine-grained stone is dramatic, but the loss in the rusticated stone, which constitutes the majority of the field of the wall, is quite dramatic. Large fragments of fist size or greater are separating from the building and have fallen to the sidewalk shed over the years. Next slide, please. As you can see, please note that the exterior repairs that were performed more than 25 years ago involve cementitious patch materials, which are located throughout the facade, but primarily concentrated at areas of the finer grained ornamental stone. Next slide, please. These are views of cracking, of surface loss, of detail loss, and of general deterioration in the finer grained ornamental material. You can notice that the depth of deterioration is quite considerable. It will take a considerable effort to remove stone material down to sound material, which is several inches deep. Next slide, please. Also evident is organic material or green staining on the stone surface. The root systems of the organic materials penetrate into the surface of the stone and fracture the stone in the same manner as freeze-thaw and acidic dissolution. Available options for addressing deteriorated stone conditions include patching, partial replacement or Dutchman repairs, resurfacing of individual stones by rotating the stones to expose the rear surface, and full replacement with either natural stone or replacement materials that are acceptable to the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission. Next slide. Our examination identified large areas of deterioration in both the brown rusticated field stone and in the red trim stone. The majority of the face and street walls are clad in Longfellow brownstone with the rusticated surface. Casual observation of this material may create a false impression that it is in good condition, perhaps because of the irregularity of its rusticated surfaces, which may add in hiding defects. Closer examination, including physical sounding of ground floor stone, indicates significant delamination of the stone surface. As the first floor stone is protected by the sidewalk shed and has been for the past 20+ years, it is highly likely that other Longfellow brownstone areas with rusticated surfaces but above the sidewalk shed and therefore exposed to weathering will prove to be equally delaminated and in need of repairs. We fully anticipate that additional repair will become clearer with ever closer range access and study. Given the visibly apparent extent of stone deterioration from the boom lift, we performed 4 stone removal probes and determined that the extent of deterioration in stone anchors, in metallic strap anchors that secure the stone in place, was significant. This is another area of concern, that the stone not only is fracturing within the body of the stone itself, but that the materials that are holding the stone in place are corroding. I'd like to conclude my present part of the presentation by saying I have built a career in trying to maintain and save and restore old buildings and have a tremendous affection for old buildings. I'm deeply saddened, again, by the condition of this building and also by the circumstances that surround this particular situation. I'd like to turn the microphone to Severin Associates for a discussion of the structural issues.
Thank you, Rick. Good evening. My name is Mohammed Rahal. I'm a senior associate at Severin Associates, a structural engineering firm. I have 23 years of experience designing and inspecting structures, including numerous existing buildings in the city that were built out of a variety of materials. I performed a structural condition survey of West Park Church in its entirety in 2021 and again this year, and made the following findings. The sandstone veneer, as mentioned by Rick, is in an unsafe condition. In 2021, we found that the gable roof over the round stained glass window was separated from the exterior wall, exterior brick, by 4 inches, and the mezzanine ceiling support joists were detached from the wall. We quickly added a fix for the gap in the roof and the unsupported joists under an emergency condition. Further site measurements and exterior wall scans reveal that this section of the wall is leaning 12 inches outwards at the pinnacle toward 86th Street relative to the base of the wall at the sidewalk. This amount of lean for a 55-foot high bearing wall is excessive because it puts significantly more stress on the outside face of the wall than what is normally acceptable for historical brick. The good people who built this church did not build the wall with a 12-inch lean. The opposite brick wall at the back of the church, with the other round stained glass window on the north side, is also leaning outwards by 4 inches, though only over a height of 20 feet. The lean of the north and south walls is visually evident if you look at them from the inside of the sanctuary floors and mezzanine. On inspection of the attic, we saw that the roof is supported by a system of wood rafters, large timber beams, and wood trusses that are supplemented by steel tie rods, which is common for a church of this age. Observations made include pattern plaster cracks in the sanctuary ceilings, a long, wide vertical crack front sanctuary wall within the attic, and observed conditions related to the wood trusses and rafters led to the conclusion that the north and south walls have been subjected to an outward lateral thrust, the roof structure, due to a phenomenon known as creep, or you can think of it as a general slacking of the roof structure over time. Although there is nothing inherently with the slackening of a wood roof of an old building, it has led to a condition where the main bearing wall of the sanctuary facing the right of way is leaning significantly and will be overstressed should a big snow or windstorm come. On consideration of these findings, we recommend that a stabilization program be implemented to rehabilitate this historic structure in an appropriate way. Leaving the structure as is or focusing only on the facade issues and some other minor repairs while ignoring the bones or the overall stability of the structure is not the correct way to approach the preservation of this building. A system of steel girts against the leaning walls with new connections and a system of ties that joins the girts on the north and south sides, in addition to a general tightening and repair of the roof trusses, bearing walls, rafters, and floor framing, is required to stabilize the structure and ensure that there is no risk of structural failure in the future. Next slide, please. In addition to the primary finding that relates to the overall stability of there are other issues that were found with the structure that need to be addressed. The brick bearing wall supporting the bell tower, the lower picture here, is in great need of pointing as water infiltration from the roof has caused the mortar on the inside face of the wall to wash away. Large areas of brick within the bell tower, as can be seen in the photo, need attention, which is significant when considering the condition of the sandstone on the outside. Other issues with the exterior brick at the back of the house, such as these vertical cracks below exterior windows on the upper photo, are evident throughout the facade. Next slide, please. Here are some other examples of localized issues. The framing of the stair landing, this stair landing needs to be repaired, and signs of water damage are evident throughout the ceiling of the sanctuary, as seen in the bottom photo here from the mezzanine level. Deficiencies throughout the church include cracked and rotted wood members, wood headers that are cracked and split, and issues with inadequate floor framing and or decking, some of which are excessive deflection at some of the areas of the sanctuary floor. It should also be noted that anyone who's with the renovation and rehabilitation of old structures can tell you that without fail, once you start constructing one of these projects, a host of other issues comes to light. To conclude, in order to properly preserve this building, it is imperative that the structural issues are addressed in an appropriate way, because the continued safety and stability of this house of worship is of paramount importance.
Thank you. I'm Toby Snyder, Architect and Design Director at Epics Collaborative. If you could bring up the next slide. I'm going to take you through the highlights of the fire protection, life safety, and accessibility report that the applicant hired CCI code consultants to complete. In addition to noting that the building is in significant disrepair, they documented that there's no automatic sprinkler system. There is an antiquated alarm system, but it does not have audible or visual notifications. The building's fire exits are in open wooden stair halls. Only some of the spaces have two means of egress, and one of them is to a small confined rear yard space. There is no emergency lighting. Next slide. Accessibility. There are several physical conditions that prohibit accessible use of the building. None of the entrances are accessible. There are no accessible routes from the sanctuary to any of the levels of the building, including the balcony. There's no accessible restrooms, and the interior doors, hardware, and railings are all non-compliant. Next slide, please. The building has a long list of DOB violations that continue to be issued. This slide shows just some of them from the last 4 years, noting safety concerns such as spalling stonework, walls that are out of plumb and leaning, and in their words, hazardous deteriorating conditions. Next slide, please. So the scopes of work outlined to bring the building up to code were analyzed by leading builders group. And this table shows, next slide. This table shows the conservative cost estimates that they came up with. The first column, totaling nearly $30 million, is the cost to bring the church back to a state of repair and safety such that it can be used again by the congregation. The other columns show costs for adaptive reuse scenarios, which include interior work. Scenario A, which is the second column here. It's hidden behind the marker. Scenario A is a reuse as a commercial space. Scenario B, which is the third column, infills the balcony level in the center. And the fourth column, scenarios C and D, repurpose the building as apartments, which would involve a You want me to try that, Mike? Oh, all right. Okay. I'll just go through. Okay. So the C and D repurpose the building as apartments, which would involve a substantial amount of exterior modifications to punch new residential windows into the facade. It is difficult to estimate how destructive and costly these modifications would be on such an ailing structure and facade. So these are best case scenarios. You can see that these totals range from $30 to $70 million. It is important to note that they don't include soft costs. They don't account for uncertainties such as tariffs or potential trade wars. Furthermore, we need to stress that much of the evaluations completed by our engineers were visual and non-invasive. There remain several unknowns, so it's likely that costs would increase as one delves deeper. Next slide. In 2023, the Landmarks Preservation Commission retained Cumming as an independent consultant to evaluate the church's cost estimates under each scenario. In all of the scenarios, the church's projected costs were even lower than those assumed by Cumming, who was retained by LPC. Now we'll move on to the hardship financial analysis. Adam?
Thank you. Thank you, Toby. And thank you to the members of Community Board 7. My name is Adam Wald from Appraisers and Planners, which is now part of Stout. We are a real estate valuation and consulting firm based in Manhattan. As a fellow community board member, I sit on CB8. I'm thankful for the opportunity to present to you. Our firm was retained by the applicant to prepare the reasonable return analysis portion of the hardship application. The analysis presented builds on a report our firm prepared in 2023 in connection with the previous submission. In the 2023 submission, we found that the property did not achieve a reasonable return under any scenario. One of the findings for granting a hardship. Sorry, you should be on the next slide, please. Fine. All of the findings and conclusions from the 2023 submission were subsequently confirmed by Keith Brennan and his team at Weitzman Associates, the expert valuation and consulting firm hired by Landmarks Preservation Commission to review and rebut our work. The 2025 application, which we've submitted, builds on the 2023 application. It includes updated construction costs provided by LBG and adds a fourth scenario, the mixed income scenario that enjoys a new 467M tax abatement. Our conclusion is as follows. Under all four scenarios, a reasonable return is unable to be achieved. I will now run through the slides addressing the reasonable return financial analysis that details some of our inputs and conclusions. Next slide. The purpose of the economic analysis is determine whether a reasonable return, as defined, can be achieved following a renovation and restoration of the property. The data and analysis is fixed to the test year, which is 2024 to 25, and uses the 2025 assessed value of $3,804,750. The reasonable return is defined as a 6% return over this assessed value. This calculation is set by both Landmarks law and LPC precedent hardship matters. Next slide, please. Oh no, back one. Thank you. The basic components of the economic analysis are presented on this slide. In summary, we estimated market rent for the subject property under all 4 scenarios. We then estimated operating expenses under all 4 scenarios. We then incorporate the previously referenced renovation and restoration costs into the analysis as an annualized expense per LPC statute and again, LPC precedent. The resulting net income after considering all of these costs is used to determine whether a reasonable return can be achieved. Next slide. The analysis is comprised of 4 development scenarios. The first 2 are shown on this slide. We studied the same 3 scenarios in our 2023 submission as we did in 2025 and added a 4th. The first one is the base scenario, a commercial community facility use with the existing building area. The second scenario is a commercial community facility use that maximizes all available areas within the envelope. We were able to create, with FX's assistance, approximately 3,600 square feet of infill commercial space. Next slide, please. We then conducted 2 multifamily scenarios. The first one is a market rate scenario that involves a substantial renovation to both the interior and exterior of the building in order to create legal windows for 21 apartments. The mixed income scenario employs the same multifamily renovation and seeks to model the benefits of a 467M tax abatement, a program that incentivizes the conversion of non-residential uses into residential use in exchange for a 25% affordable unit set aside. Under all 4 scenarios, a reasonable return is not achieved. Next slide, please. This slide addresses the computation to translate the estimated renovation and restoration costs that Toby spoke about into an annual operating expense. Simply, the total renovation and restoration costs for the 4 scenarios are added to the improvement assessment, multiplied by 2%, and then are included as an annual operating expense. This expense for the 4 scenarios ranges from $1.15 million to $1.44 million, depending on the scenario. Next slide, please. As shown in this table, under all 4 scenarios, a reasonable return cannot be achieved. I will now quickly run through a few key tables from our full report, which is part of the submission to LPC. Next slide, please. This is a side-by-side comparison of the base and infill scenarios. As you can observe from the last line in the table, even without factoring real estate taxes as an expense, the net operating income is negative and does therefore not meet a reasonable return. Next slide, please. The multifamily scenario assumes the project is extensively renovated, including punching over 60 new windows through the exterior of the building in order to allow for a conversion into a 21-unit apartment building. The new windows required to create legal light and air are represented in this image as the orange elements. The unit mix was designed to both fit the existing envelope and meet the demands of the Upper West Side. And the unit mix we estimated includes 5 studio units, 3 1-bedroom units, 3 2-bedroom units, 5 2-bedroom plus den units, and 5 3-bedroom units. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is a side-by-side comparison of the market rate and mixed income scenarios. As you can observe from the last line in this table, even without factoring in real estate taxes as an expense, the net operating income does not meet a reasonable return, and in the case of the mixed income scenario, is negative. Next slide, please. At the request of LPC from our prior submission, an analysis was conducted to study the reasonable return analysis if the effective costs were reduced as a result of federal historic tax credits. The total net reduction in costs associated with federal historic tax credits is between 13.6 and 14.5%. This reduction in net costs, however, does not result in a reasonable return of 6%, as shown in this table. I'll now turn it back to Toby will take us through the proposed improvements.
Thank you. Next slide, please. I'm going to be discussing some of the parameters for the proposed building on the site. Next slide, please. The property is a corner lot in a C15 district, which allows for a 10 FAR mixed use or 101,000 square foot building. It would be constructed as of right as an R10A contextual massing. Zoning controls require street wall continuity on both wide streets, and it would rise to meet and match the neighboring building heights and setbacks of about 146 feet, at which point the building would set back 10 feet and rise to a height of 215 feet or 19 stories. Next slide, please. A 10,000 square foot West Park community facility would be provided at the base of the building. Here we see some of that, this plan here, we see some of that space allocated in the cellar with a double height sanctuary auditorium space. Next slide. At grade would be the main West Park entrance on Amsterdam Avenue with 4,000 square feet set aside for accessible entrance, lobby, and elevators down to the lower level. On the corner, to meet the streetscape requirements, a small retail space would be provided, and along West 86th Street would be the residential lobby. Next slide. Upstairs would house L-shaped residential floors with an open rear yard to give light and air to the apartments. Next slide. Here is, I'm going to show you some preliminary illustrative renderings of what the future West Park community facility could be. This is at the floor, a safe, accessible lobby entrance with a connection to the level below. Next slide. And in the lower level, a double height space that is safe, code compliant, accessible, and well equipped to accommodate a number of community programs, performances, and meetings. We've been assisting with these preliminary views, but West Park has yet to begin designing this space, but would be more than happy community to meet the neighborhood's aspirations for what this 10,000 square foot space could offer. I'll now turn it back to Roger to conclude.
Next slide, please. In summary, two key issues must be proven to meet the statutory requirement set forth in the hardship statute. We believe we meet both of them, and the Landmarks Commission should make a determination of a hardship. While it would result in the loss of a landmark building and the historic home of this congregation, the sale of the building is necessary to ensure its survival. Granting a hardship would provide new 10,000 square feet of community and worship space and sufficient funding to support new pastoral leadership. It would also fund the West Park Presbyterian Church Social Justice Fund, the largest gift in the Presbytery's history. This fund will provide desperately needed resources for community services at a time when such programs are under attack. Turning the hardship down would not guarantee that the building would be preserved, but it would almost certainly result in the demise of one of the oldest congregations in the Upper West Side. The church would still be forced to sell the building, but as a landmark, it has limited development potential and would require an investment of $40 to $50 million to meet current life safety codes before it could be occupied. The building would continue to decline until a buyer could be found and repairs could be made, and the sidewalk bridge surrounding the building would likely remain in place for the foreseeable future. On behalf of our entire team, I'd like to close by expressing our heartfelt thanks for your patience this evening and for the opportunity to share our story with you. Losing this landmark is hardly an easy decision for West Park. But the reality is that this is the only solution we can see that would ensure a future for this congregation. West Park's mission has always been to serve the people of the Upper West Side. That mission remains unchanged, but if the hardship is approved, it would be able to expand its reach across the city, providing the resources for meals, housing assistance, and other services to countless New Yorkers. Thank you once again for your time, your consideration of this application. We're united in our commitment to what's best for the Upper West Side, and we look forward to working together with you in the years ahead.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sawaiba from Manhattan Borough President Mark Levine's office. On behalf of the Borough President, I'd like to share a statement. The Borough President strongly supports preserving West Park Presbyterian Church. Thank you. And protecting the center at West Park, which has become a vital cultural and arts hub for our community. The Borough President believes this landmark deserves to be saved and restored, allowing it to continue serving as a space for the inviting arts community that calls it a home. We also want to thank Councilmember Brewer for her leadership on this issue. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Hi, oh, the lights are really blinding. Hi, I'm Hannah. Good evening. I'm here on behalf of Congressman Jerry Nadler, who'd like to share the following remarks with the Preservation Committee. The Upper West Side is a bastion of architectural beauty, New York history, and community activism, and the West Park Presbyterian Church is a real embodiment of this trifecta. When the church received its landmark status in 2010, the Landmarks Preservation Commission noted that the church is considered one of the best examples of Romanesque revival style religious structure in New York City, with its bold forms with broad, rounded arch openings that are clad in extraordinarily deep red sandstone. Beyond the impressive physical characteristics of the building, the church has been a space steeped in inclusivity and community service since its construction in the 1880s. Congregants have fought back against anti-Chinese bigotry at its height in the 19th century, advocated for civil rights, and supported same-sex marriage rights. The church and subsequently the center at West Park served as a community gathering space and an arts hub. It would be a real loss for the Upper West Side if the building were to be demolished. And I believe it's critical that the city should honor the history of this 135-year-old church and its status as a architectural landmark. I think that was written. Though the fight for preservation may be a difficult one, and there are many repairs still needed in the building, there are viable avenues to pursue that would help steward the preservation of this church and bring it back to its glory. I have joined various community efforts, including those spearheaded by Councilwoman Brewer, to reject this hardship application because the applicants still have not satisfactorily met the conditions for hardship. It is also why I joined the amicus brief to challenge this demolition. I will continue working with my elected colleagues and community members to protect this landmark and ensure that it will be able to serve as a gathering space for the Upper West Side for years to come. Thank you.
Okay, next I would like to welcome a representative from Landmark West to present, as I don't think we have any other elected officials right now. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Megan Fitzpatrick, and I'm speaking on behalf of Landmark West. Landmark West is a not-for-profit community organization committed to the preservation of the architectural heritage of the Upper West Side, and I promise to keep my comments brief. Hardship applications are, by design, appropriately rare and granted only in cases where a landmark has suffered such extensive damage that it can no longer serve its intended purpose. In this case, as in the previous application, no genuine financial hardship has been demonstrated. Only the hardship of a steward that long ago abandoned its responsibility to preserve a designated landmark. Although in need of repair, the historic church remained active and continued to serve its community until just months ago, when its lead tenant was evicted in the owner's zealous pursuit of demolition. Religious properties have inherent value, representing significant periods of the city's history, from architecture to their social and cultural impact on society. The Landmarks Preservation Commission recognized in 2010 that this church was one of the best examples of a Romanesque revival-style religious building in the city, and how it served more than just its congregation, being the site of the city's first same-sex union, the cradle for God's Love We Deliver, and proving ground for Joe Papp's Shakespeare Festival. Until recently, it continued to serve diverse groups and foster the arts. Repeated closures of places of worship, something that is all too common in the city, are contributing to a loss in our cultural landscape. We strongly believe that if this hardship case is approved, it will set a dangerous precedent and seal the fate of historic religious properties with failing congregations across the city. Opposing this hardship proposal will make it clear that demolition by neglect will not be permitted. The principal basis for the Presbytery's economic hardship application is that the cost of repairing or reusing the building is so high that the church, however it is used, could never generate a financial return. They also claim that the structure is no longer fit for purpose. These claims, however, have been refuted by multiple independent experts in structural assessments. Each of these experts determined that the cost of repair is only a fraction of what the applicant has represented, yet the Presbytery did not act. Also, earlier this year, the church was a vibrant arts venue offering a range of programs that featured both well-known performers and emerging local artists. Tenants such as the Centre at West Park and Arts and Theatre Organization were an integral part of the church's living heritage. In addition, other religious tenants continued to gather at the church for worship. All of this activity ceased when the tenants were evicted over the summer. Offers by the centre to pay increased rent, commit millions for repairs, and even buy the church with the restoration plan have all been denied by the Presbytery to pursue this profit-making venture. We find it necessary to restate that when a property is designated an individual landmark, specific legal obligations arise both for the owner of the property and the members and staff of the LPC. Those obligations are neither mysterious nor hidden. The LPC is tasked with the preservation, protection, maintenance of designated properties. This is its legislative mandate. The LPC, pursuant to Title 25 of the NYC Administrative Code, is charged with the duty to promote, preserve the general welfare of the city, enhance the city's educational, cultural interests, and promote and strengthen its economy, commerce, and industry through the means of preservation, protection, and the maintenance of historic resources. The application is asking the LPC to reconsider the grounds upon which they were established and overlook what is right for the cultural landscape of the city in favor of development. Sadly, since the day that West Park Presbyterian Church was designated, the LPC has done little, if anything, to encourage or compel the owners to take steps to fulfill its obligations. Now, because of this failure and flagrant refusal of the owner to fulfill its obligations, the commissioners are being presented with not only a request to support the owner in efforts to bring this individual landmark into good repair, but rather a proposal to let the owner bury its failure in a pile of rubble. The community has proven that there is still life for the building. There are many options between outright neglect of a community asset and the construction of more luxury apartments. To see this building, which has been so deeply embedded in the community, turn into market rate luxury apartments for developer profit stands against everything this city proposes to represent in 2025. Landmark West urges the community to stand with landmarks and reject the hardship request to demolish the individually landmarked West Park Presbyterian Church. Thank you.
Senator Hoylman Siegel, all you. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm State Senator Brad Hoylman Siegel. Thank you thank you chairs Brodheim and Rosenberg and members of the Preservation Committee and Upper West Side neighbors. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm State Senator Brad Hoylman Siegel and I represent Manhattan's West Side from Christopher Street up to West 103rd, including the Upper West Side community that has long cherished West Park Presbyterian Church and the center at West Park, which was housed there until this summer. I urge you to advise the Landmarks Preservation Commission to reject the hardship application now before it. The church was designated, as many of you know, a New York City landmark in 2010, thanks to the stellar leadership of Councilmember Gail Brewer, who recognized its architectural and cultural significance. The Landmarks Preservation Commission is entrusted to protect the irreplaceable historic structures like this church. Hardship applications under Administrative Code Section 25-309 are a narrow exception. They can be granted only when a landmark has genuinely become inadequate for its charitable or religious use and no viable alternatives exist. The record here simply does not support that. This building, while in need of repairs, isn't irreparably unsound. In fact, many of the obstacles to repair have been created not by inherent conditions of the building, but by deliberate decisions of the owner. This isn't a genuine hardship. It is an attempt to clear the way for a lucrative redevelopment deal. Multiple independent engineers, including Wiss, Janney, Elsner Associates, and a licensed cost estimator, Slocum, found the building to be structurally sound, with immediate repairs limited to facade and roof work and estimated under $2 million, far below the applicant's $50 million claims. LPC's own engineer agreed, calling the applicant's figures, quote, excessive, end quote. The center also took steps to address repairs. In early 2025, while still the tenant, it hired professionals and submitted facade and roof plans to the LPC. Staff gave preliminary approvals, but could not issue permits without the owner's consent, which was deliberately withheld. Had the owner cooperated, the long-standing sidewalk shed might have been removed months ago. A core element of hardship analysis is whether the building can still fulfill its intended use. In this case, the answer is certainly yes. From 2018 until this summer, the Center at West Park activated the building as a vibrant cultural hub, presenting over 800 performances to more than 55,000 audience members. These included theater, dance, music, film, writing, and community programs. The sanctuary was leased to the Lighthouse Chapel, an active congregation that continues to hold services every Sunday. The building has served and continues to serve as a living space of artistic and spiritual community. The eviction of the center in June 2025 was, far from the result of disuse, a strategic move by the owner, undertaken while this hardship application was prepared. In fact, shortly before the eviction, the center offered to lease the building for $30,000 per month, 11 times its previous rent, to continue to maintain the building and to fund the necessary facade and roof repairs at its own expense in accordance with landmark requirements. This was a good faith, concrete proposal to keep the building economically viable and preserved. The Administrative Commission refused even to consider it. And notably, the applicant has offered no assurances that the center or its artists would have any place in the proposed development. Demolition would deprive the Upper West Side of one of its last Romanesque revival ecclesiastical structures, a rare and architecturally significant survivor, and erase an active, thriving community institution. The Landmarks Law was enacted precisely to prevent outcomes like this. I urge you to thus support the preservation of the church and to stand with the thousands of New Yorkers who want this remarkable building to remain a center of spiritual and artistic life for generations to come. Thank you again for your time and your stewardship of New York's architectural, communal, and cultural legacies. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next person on the agenda, the representatives from the center of West Park who have 5 minutes to present.
My name is Michael Hiller. I'm from Hiller PC, and I've been a preservation lawyer for over 30 years, and I'm a member of the faculty at Pratt Institute, where I'm a professor in its historic preservation department. I represent the West Park Center at West Park, and I rise in opposition to the application. Because I have limited time, I'm going to focus just on requirements B and C for purposes of tonight. C says the improvement has ceased to be adequate, suitable, or appropriate for the use it was being made of at the time of the hardship application and also at the time the property was purchased. Until the center at West Park was evicted from the church was in full and active use as a community facility and a religious facility, with events occurring every day and night. The applicant alleges that the building poses an imminent hazard. However, if you take a look, just example, this is the West Park Presbyterian Church, a typical night less than a year ago, fully attended. In fact, there are 7 performance spaces within the landmark church. They were all in active use, and some of them are still in active use, but the subtenants in the church have been forced to sign eviction agreements. They must leave by December 31st. Otherwise, those spaces would be used too. But the point is, in order for them to win this case, they've got to show that it has ceased to be a suitable, appropriate, and adequate space, and they clearly can't do that. It's also, as Senator Hoylman said, used as a religious facility every week. So this is a property that is in constant and active use. The story that Mr. Leaf told you a few moments ago, that the building was in such bad shape back in 2010, they lost congregants. The commissioners of the commission were so dubious of that allegation that they insisted upon an inspection of the facility, and they came away with rejecting every statement they made and they did designate the property over Mr. Leaf's associates' objections. Regardless of the active use of the building, the applicant is alleging that the building is unsafe. I have with me here an insurance policy that was issued after the building was inspected by the carrier in February of 2025. The building is fine. They said that the building is going to cost $55 million to fix. Everything you just heard from the design team's experts was rejected in this report, which I will leave with you tonight, by Don Friedman of Old Structures. Who's Don Friedman? He is the independent expert hired by the Landmarks Preservation Commission. I didn't pay him, they didn't pay him. He is an independent expert, and among other things, he said, and I quote, that the cost estimates by the designers team was excessive, that it was wildly out of scope, and that there is a minimalist and a maximalist possibility for purposes of renovating. They went beyond the maximalist. How much is this supposed to cost? In this report, $1.7 million to fix the facade, $5 million for the whole building. That's 1/10 of what the applicant's team said. We brought in 3 different independent experts before we heard from Don Friedman. These 3 independent experts concluded that the numbers were within 10% of what Don Friedman said. So now we have a group of experts, our experts and the LPC's experts, all saying it's going to be around $5 million. And we have the applicant saying, no, it's 10 times that amount, which of course is absurd. Having said all that, the second requirement is that we have to show that the improvement, or I shouldn't say we have to show, they have to show that the improvement cannot generate a reasonable return on investment, which is 6%. 6% of the city assessed value, which is the value that's been created for purposes of determining taxation. So here's what we can tell you about that. Number one, with respect to the premises, I can tell you right now, I have checks in my hand signed, $30,000 a month, first month's rent, last month's rent, and the security deposit. We're prepared right now to rent the church. In addition, we are also prepared to pay for the entire renovation. We have millions of dollars on hand right now. We have tax returns showing that we have generated enough revenue on an annual basis to continue to pay for those repairs. Plus, we have an additional $3 million from the state of New York to cover anything that we can't cover, which, by the way, we can. So, ladies and gentlemen, I've been practicing law for 30 years in preservation space. I'll hurry up, Adam, I promise. This is literally the weakest application that has ever been filed before the Landmarks Preservation Commission. If I had 10 more minutes, I would rip those guys to shreds on what they said, but I'm not going to do it because I don't have time. Let me mention one last thing before I wrap up. We haven't gotten into the issue of self-imposed hardship, but I'm going to file papers with you. There's a decision that the commission issued called Stall. It's a 62-page, single-spaced decision by the commission. Let me tell you something. Your decision is usually 5 to 7 pages, 62 pages. And what they talked about is about self-imposed hardship. You can't create the conditions that you claim are economic challenges and then say, oh, I have a hardship. You need to knock down this, what was described in the designation report as one of the Upper West Side's most important buildings. So I'm just telling you right now, in Stall, several tenants had voluntarily vacated their apartments, and the commission said, you never tried to get them back. Here, the applicant evicted all of its own tenants and never tried back. And the last point I'll make to you is, you heard for a few moments, very briefly, Valerie Campbell talking about a transfer of air rights, and she just said, there really aren't too many eligible buildings and we can't transfer the air rights. The same bogus argument was made in Stall, where they said, we probably won't be able to do it. They're required to market and aggressively try to sell those air rights. I can tell you right now, the City of Yes statute is designed in part, last point, the City of Yes statute section 7542 amended the old rules on transferring air rights. There are now dozens of buildings that are eligible. They never tried to find any. I'm telling you right now, if you add those air rights to the rent and the fact that we're paying $5 million to renovate this space, I'm telling you right now, there is no hardship, and we're done. Thank you very much for your time.
Councilwoman Rosenberg is here. Is that correct? Is she here? No. We're following the agenda.
I am Ethel Brewer, City Council member of the Upper West Side. Thank you. And I'm here because when I was in the City Council previously, I landmarked this building. And ever since the last 2 or 3 years in particular, what I will say are 3 things. Number one, that damn building is not falling down, and don't let anybody tell you it is. That is not true. Second, number 2 is that the cultural capacity, interest is phenomenal. And you'll hear from others who are cultural icons, as well as people who just love the arts, that there are very few places on the West Side, or even in Manhattan, where you can find the quality of the space and the cost of the space to be accessible to artists. And it is so warm and welcoming when you hear artists of great renown say that to the entire community. They grew up with this type of opportunity, and they want others to have the same. We need this kind of cultural opportunity in our neighborhood. And number 3, this is a building that is landmarked, for Christ's sake. And it is beautiful for all the architectural reasons that many of you know. When you landmark a building, it's done for a reason, and it should continue to be standing and be a landmark. That is number one, and everybody should understand that. Please, please understand that. So I'm not going to repeat what others are going to say. I want to thank the board and the staff of the center, and I want to thank everybody who's been to so many events there, either as a visual artist. I was just there for the pop-up art show the other night, and the artists were ecstatic to have a space that they could show their art in, and that's local, and that is reasonable, and that builds community. We are building community with this building in addition to saving it in its preservation state. So I really find it objectionable when somebody states that it's not worth preserving, that it isn't landmarkable, and that isn't worth, the building is not worth being saved. That's wrong. We have the money to take care of it. We have the interest to make sure, and we have the need for a cultural center. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Councilwoman. I believe we have the public advocate, so we're going to hear from the public advocate. Thank you.
Yes, hey, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Can folks hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Sorry.
Oh, thank you so much. Peace and blessings, love and light to everyone. Sorry, I could not be there in person. I really would have liked to be. I'd like to just associate myself with the fabulous Councilman Miguel Brewer and some of the words that I heard before that was being presented. I just wanted to make sure I was here just for a few moments as a citywide elected official, just expressing how important it is that we really work to save this center. I mean, across the city, I see people creating all kind of reasons of why they have to take something so they can make as much money as humanly possible without respecting what is actually there. And having learned about what the center has provided for the community and for the city, we have to do everything we can to preserve that kind of space. I was proud to have worked on something called All the President's Men that was in Long Island to preserve this with artists and people who came from this center. My first love is acting. I think some folks know that, and I can't tell you the importance of having a space where artists and creative types can come together, how difficult it is to find these kind of spaces across this city, the type of artistry and people that have been produced from this center, and the fact that I keep hearing more and more about people ignoring ways that they can actually save the center, that we don't need to remove landmark status to be demolished, is kind of the worst part of this process. This is extremely valuable. Again, just as a citywide elected official traveling across the city, there's not many spaces like these. Now more than ever, we need spaces where people can commune. We need spaces where creative and artist types can really get together and feed off each other, not just for this community, but for the entire city. So I'm also not going to repeat everything that everyone has said, but I just want to lend my voice to this community board to do everything you can to preserve this center. It is a gem for the community and for the city. We've seen the fruits that it is, given till now, and we can know what it's going to give in the future. And most importantly, we're seeing evidence that there are other options that people just don't want to explore, which makes it seem like people just want to try to take this down to try to build, to make as much money as possible. And at some point, we really have to figure out social profit, what is good for the community as well, and weigh that and give it some weight. So we have other options that we can do. Let's work on that, and let's preserve West Park for the great space that it is. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Peace and blessings to everyone. Thank you.
Applicant back to the speakers table, and we will give you an opportunity to answer some questions from the committee. Is there anything that you feel warrants a response from what you just heard? I want you to do that.
There's quite a lot, I think, but we'll try to be brief because I know that there are a lot of people in the audience. The first is this assertion that the church has created demolition by neglect. I think if you look at the record when the church was designated, and we've included some of that material in the application, you will see that the church was in fact not in good condition. It was actually closed. They had a plan that they were going to try to restore the main sanctuary, build a building where the parish house is, and designation caused the developer to withdraw from that plan. And that was a plan, I believe, for affordable housing as well. And the church at that point could not be occupied. The church then spent a lot of its resources, and Roger says it sold all of its other property. It eventually couldn't pay for its pasture. They have documented expenses of hundreds of thousands of dollars they've spent for the church. During the prior hardship application, the center kept asserting that they had spent a lot of money restoring the church. The Landmarks Commission asked them to document those expenditures. We asked them to document those expenditures. We never received any documentation at all of that. So that is, I think, sort of one question. The other issue is that when the church was designated, many members of the community and elected officials made promises that the church would be assisted, that there would be funds available. Those funds never became available in any appreciable amount. And it is unfortunate that the checks that are not made out to the church, but to the center, were not produced at the time when the building was designated, and the congregation could have used financial assistance in making the repairs that were needed. So, Roger, I'm sure you have other response.
Yeah, a couple of points about the suitability question and the reasonable return question. I think it's worth pointing out first on the economic return that the Landmarks Commission hired its own experts to do this analysis. They concluded that the return was even more negative than we had came up with. That was an independent set of experts, and I'm not exactly sure where Mr. Hiller gets his facts about the economic return analysis, because it's clearly spelled out chapter and verse in the statute, which we filed line by line. The other thing that I find remarkable is with regard to the suitability question, Mr. Hiller lives off the last word on that sentence, which is suitable for use by the owner. Center at West Park was never the owner of the building, and the question is whether the suitability can be met by someone who owns the building and has to assume the responsibility for maintenance, repair, dealing with walls that are leaning into 86th Street and so on and so forth. This is a vastly different test than renting the space from somebody else who takes on these obligations and risks on their own.
Another point had to do with the availability of whether there are suitable receiving sites for the development rights of the church. We do have a study that our architects conducted, looking at all of the sites that would be potential receiving sites, and that is included in the application. And I would request that the committee look at that study, because I think it will show that there are not any receiving sites. And interestingly, even though the church's plight has been evident for quite a while, it's worth noting that nobody has ever offered to buy development rights from the church. So, and then I think just the other sort of general point is, it's true that the hardship application process is a rare process, but it is a really imperative part and essential component of the landmarks law. It's required to keep the landmarks law constitutional. The statute sets forth standards for when you can meet it. And you really have to look at those standards. You have to look at the application and determine if you meet them. And we believe that if you examine our application, and there are hundreds of pages, that you will have, that it's really abundantly clear that the church has met these standards.
Please keep your questions short and to the point so that we can get to public testimony as quickly as possible. Get into your question.
Just a factual question. As in marketing the property, did the church receive anything either monetary or for arranging meal market educational, cultural, performance, etc., not for profit organization? Anybody, and obviously with the apparent means to carry the
To purchase the property.
I think over the years, the church has, various schools have looked at the property. Other groups, I'm not aware that there have never been any offers prior to filing this application to purchase the property as it is. I said prior to filing the application.
I just have a quick follow-up on the PBR question. When the sites were identified, possible receiving sites on their city of yes, was there an effort made to contact the owners of any of those sites to see if there would be an interest? I understand that nobody came to the church, but are you aware of any effort? That's how we go.
When you were doing the study, did you do any outreach to potential receiving sites, or is this just a study that says you don't receive sites?
This is a study looking at the sites, looking at whether they're overbuilt, whether they're occupied residential buildings, whether they're co-ops, and they were not sites that seem to be feasible receiving sites for these development rights. A lot of the property that is within the bounds where you could transfer development rights is in the historic district, and across the street is the Bellenord. So that is, those pose significant limitations.
What was such a huge difference between the estimates of your professionals and the professionals hired by the agency?
There have been numerous studies that began back in 2000 on what it would cost to repair and restore this building. And there's been a fairly consistent pattern over that period of time in terms of what this would cost. The Blue Ribbon Panel study that was underwritten by the Landmarks Conservancy in 2011 found that just restoring the facade and nothing else would cost over $14 million. And that was in 2011. That translates to about $20 million today. I think we have one outlier on the estimates here that has been overly relied upon. It reminds me a little bit about the argument about global warming. You can always find one guy who says it's not human, activity. It's sort of a false equivalent to say that all the studies that have been done are equal to one study that is an outlier. We can't honestly believe that that is a realistic analysis of what it would cost to do the work.
One final question from me. The study you were just discussing, the Don Friedman full structure engineering, he estimates $9 million. And then in table 7 of the Weitzman report, it suggests that at that $9 million figure, you would still require a rent of $37
dollars per square foot to get the reasonable return. So is the way to read this that even if I don't believe the higher cost estimates that you put forward, even if you did the $9 million, if someone gave you $9 million and you did the work, you would still have to rent the building at a cost per square foot that isn't actually feasible, given that the interior of the building hasn't, no work has been done to the interior building. Is that the right way to read that?
That is what we discovered when we ran those numbers through. Adam can speak to it better than I, but in fact, when he did the $9 million estimate, it generated, you can't get the kind of rents that would generate a reasonable return, even with that expense. And the other thing with the $9 million estimate is, as I recall, Don Friedman said it could be done over time. But in fact, what that will do is require the sidewalk bridge to be up for many, many years, because all of the work is going to be staged and it'll take time. And then as you finish one segment, by the time you finish, one round, you're going to have to start over again because the facade is sort of in a state of continual deterioration.
I don't think we have any more questions from the committee, so we're going to move to public testimony. Everyone is going to have 2 minutes. We're going to call you up in panels of 3 at a time. I'm going to call the first panel and the second panel. If the panel that is on deck can be standing by the table so we can minimize transition time, that would be great. The first panel is going to be Jennifer Rogers, Natasha Griffith, and Robert Feinstein. Please do not applaud, guys. It's going to slow things down and less people are going to be able to talk. Okay. After that will be Peggy Becker, Andrea Goldwyn, and then Warren. Okay, please.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Rogers. I've lived on the Upper West Side for almost 20 years. Over the course of that time, I've been a volunteer at the West Side Campaign Against Hunger, a parent at PS 166, and a devoted fan of Barney Greengrass orange juice. In 2014, I worked with West Park on an event that Reverend Brashear orchestrated to commemorate the 50th anniversary of Freedom Summer. Being in the sanctuary that day was riveting. It was an experience of history and community that could only take place there. That's how I first became involved with the center. But I am here tonight to talk about people that are asleep, children, and their suitable use of this property. As Mr. Leaf has stated, it is the suitable use of the owner, and the owner's mission, as he also stated, is to serve the Upper West Side. And I want to talk about the Upper West Side's children and also children that come from all around. I have been a parent of a rhythmic gymnast for a number of years. The gymnastics room is on the 3rd floor of the center. I encourage all of you to watch the video so you can see what's happening inside, because it's not about one space, it's about all 7 spaces working together. So as any parent knows, there's a lot of time sitting and waiting. And you sit and wait and you see what's going on. And the kids get to see what's going on too. You could bump into an actor in a costume. You could bump into an artist coming out of a room that smells of oil paint. You can bump into a dancer stretching. All of these spaces work together. And right now, in a city where childhood often unfolds in curated, polished spaces, West Park offers something entirely different. Here, it's rough. It can be rough around the edges. It doesn't have to be perfect. That's not what we are looking for. We're looking for a space that we can use. When this space was designed, it was designed to have multiple things happening, and that's what's happening right now in the space. It is suitable, it is appropriate.
Speed reading. Okay, good evening, and thank you, Preservation Committee of CB7, for providing us this opportunity to seek your support and influence to reject the hardship application filed by the church. I am Natasha Griffith, a member of the Board of Directors of the Performing Arts Center at West Park. According to the church's bylaws, the architectural design and intent of that building were purposefully created to facilitate worship, foster fellowship, and meet the community's needs. And in the last 3 years, since its founding in 2016, the center has upheld that purpose, utilizing the space after investing funds it raised so that it could once more be a vital and collective part, not only for the Upper West Side, but for this great city. The center has received great feedback from families, children, tourists, and passersby who have had the opportunity to explore this beautiful structure located in this neighborhood, whether through a tour, a show, a program, or even a game of pickleball, all available under one roof. We transformed this space and in so doing, retained its historical role and cultural significance by sheer will and determination. Why isn't the landmark building still suitable, adequate, and appropriate for its original and most recent use when the center managed it? Why wouldn't we want to preserve one of the last remaining Romanesque revival churches in the city with its stained glass, windows, perfectly pitched functional design, and 7 distinct spaces to create art? With the help of the community, sponsors, and friends, we leverage what we saw as an opportunity for adaptive reuse. And it is that collective energy, that connection and shared focus that reverberated in that landmark when the center managed it. It felt intimate and welcoming, uniquely suited to performance and educational programs, still therefore meeting community needs in a house of worship. It is why we are here tonight. With your help, we can preserve the past while ensuring that the use of this landmark building continues to meet the needs of people in the present and the future as initially and purposefully created.
Hi, my name is Rob Feinstein. It's hard to follow all this passion, but you see it and you feel it. Okay, can you hear me now? Okay. So my name is Rob Feinstein. I live in the neighborhood. You can hear the passion surrounding this building and the artistic community that uses it every day. So I live in the neighborhood. I learned about the Center at West Park by inquiring, writing to center@westpark.com. How can I get involved? And I soon became involved in the development of the film center at the Center for West Park. Along with 2 other directors, our executive director and artistic director, we've established a film center that is more than simply just showing movies. This is an incubator for students. We have relationships with film schools. We've brought on so many different films. We've had documentary series. We've had a silent film with live music. We've had major stars come and do talkbacks after films that they've shined in. And you see the interaction in the sanctuary after the films between the actors and the directors who were there and film students and budding actors. This kind of thing can't be recreated in a 5,000 square foot basement in a condo building. The artist community has embraced the Center at West Park and embraced the concept of an incubator for the arts. And that's what's going on here that you can't find very much around the city anymore. And when it comes to film in particular, our neighborhood is dominated by AMC and Regal and the Marvel movies. You can't find places to see independent films anymore or to see student films. And here is a unique environment where that's taking place on a regular basis. We shouldn't lose that as a community. We need to hang on to this building for what it's worth. I'm going to close with this. This is about money. This is about money with the church, okay? This is not about serving the community. When the smoke clears, if this application is granted, the developer is going to turn this into condos and sell them all off and walk away with a pocket full of cash. And the presbytery is holding on to $34 million in some fund that's not going to be devoted to the Upper West Side. They're going to take this building out of the neighborhood, take the money out, and dribble out $900,000 a month in a 5,000 square foot basement space. I'm sorry, that's unfair, inappropriate. This building should be preserved. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next panel is Peggy Becker, Andrea Goldman, and Nick Warden. They'll be followed by Priya Patel, Don Krantz, and Austin Celestin. Thank you.
What'd you say? I'm sorry. Oh, hi. I'm Peggy Becker. I'm a board member at the Center of West Park, and I'm an Upper West Sider for 32 years. I strongly support the preservation of the landmark West Park Church for many reasons, but especially for the following 2 reasons. First, I passionately believe that it is vital to preserve significant old buildings. They give unique beauty and character to neighborhoods and act as a thread that connects the past to the present and the future. Our Upper West Side's beautiful 135-year-old church is considered one of the best examples of Romanesque style structures in New York City. The center at West Park has raised the funds to repair the facade and take down the scaffolding, which would allow the community to once again see this beautiful building. Sadly, the Presbytery would not allow this to happen. Instead, they want the church demolished and replaced by a generic high-rise luxury building. Instead of a gorgeous Romanesque church, we'll have another bank or a Chipotle. Please don't let this happen. Second, I'm the parent of a 27-year-old special needs kid. One of the many, many meaningful events at the church is the annual inclusion concert, which was established by the center in January of '24. It's a musical showcase for neurotypical and neurodiverse young adults designed to celebrate diversity, ability, and inclusion. Neurodiverse people are often dismissed as not able. This concert allows such kids, including my son, to show that their disability does not define them, that they have talents just like neurotypical kids. The concerts are a powerful experience for the performers and the audience. Over 50 kids from New York have participated in this event. My son and other kids feel seen, feel pride, and feel belonging. Furthermore, by holding the concert in the West Park Church, the kids have the incredible experience of performing in the grand historic sanctuary of the church, aware that they, like every person who performs in the space, are an important part of the long history of the Upper West Side. This sense of being part of history enhances every performance at the church, and every performance adds to the history. We must keep this building for the next generations of Upper West Siders so we can continue to build our shared history. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Chairs Brodheim and Rosenberg and members of the committee. I'm Andrea Goldwyn speaking on behalf of the New York Landmarks Conservancy. The Conservancy opposes this application. We have a very long history with West Park. In 2001, we started providing substantial technical assistance, and following the landmark designation grant funding, our full statement with a timeline of these activities has been submitted. The bottom line is that this application doesn't meet the city's statutory test for hardship. Let's go through the 4 parts. Parts A and D. Yes, the application includes a contract as described in the administrative code, and yes, the purchaser has presented a plan to demolish and replace the building quickly. Part B. No, the application does not show that the property is incapable of earning a reasonable return. The applicant has offered the scope of work and 3 development scenarios that don't earn the 6%. But these scenarios start with a $50 million plus restoration. Our experience with restoration in general and with West Park says that there are many other options. As you've heard, the LPC's own engineering consultant laid out a much less expensive, revised, and phased scope of work. The new lower budget would reduce the income required to reach a 6% return. We've helped many historic religious properties support their missions, build community, prioritize repairs, phase construction, obtain listing on the National Register of Historic Places, which can trigger opportunities for grant funding, and achieve successful outcomes. That can happen at West Park. Part C, no, the building can still be used for the purpose for which it was built. The church was used for religious services by the owner for decades. Another congregation worships there now. It's adequate, suitable, and appropriate for that purpose. Furthermore, the current owner intends to use part of the proposed new building for worship services, so they are still engaged in pursuing such a purpose. The Landmarks Law requires that all 4 parts of the hardship test be met. They are not. Therefore, there is no hardship. We urge you to reject this application. Thank you.
I'm Mim Warden. I've been a resident of the Upper West Side for more than 30 years. I served as the founding president of the Center at West Park. In the summer of 2010, I learned that the West Park Presbyterian Church had been designated a landmark by the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission. The small congregation at that time had made plans to demolish the building and replace it with new construction, closed it, and moved its services to another nearby church building. Once the West Park building was a landmark, that plan was no longer viable, and they looked to a new solution for its use. I had recently received a degree in arts and theology from Union Seminary, and it seemed that this was an opportunity to put into practice some of what I had been thinking about for many years, the relationship between the arts and religion. The pastor of the church then, the late Reverend Dr. Robert Bashir, showed me the interior of the building to assess its suitability for use as a place to develop the arts and community, to further this connection for a diversity of spiritual and creative thinking. He was a visionary who concurred with this idea and brought his own love of the arts into the development of programs in the church. We opened the building, cleaned up the mess left by the 3 years of disuse and inhabitants by pigeons, with an arts fair in December 2010. There was no heat in the building, but the artists worked with gloves on, and curious passersby came in to see what was happening now that the doors were opened again. A group of church members and neighbors met together many times to help conceive a process. It was a collaboration between the congregation and the neighborhood to make the space useful, comfortable, and inviting. In short, alive. Over the next few years, the arts community. Pardon? Oh. Sorry.
You got one more sentence. So you got one.
Well, as time went on, we realized that there was need for management of this process, and the center at West Park has been fulfilling that, managing both the arts and the building since then. We've made repairs.
They'll be followed by Brian Baker, Clyde Haberman, and Emily Kahn.
Okay. Hi, my name is Ethel. I am a resident of the Upper West Side. I live on 19 Broadway, studying to be a public school teacher. So I am kind of trying to learn how to hold multiple truths. And I think this is an unfortunate case of many things being true from my perspective as one of the many people who are not in this room. I know that this is a very passionate group of people, but there's 700 plus million 700 plus thousand people who live on the Upper West Side who are not represented here. So I kind of want to offer a collection of thoughts. One is that it is truly sad to lose such a beloved art space. I can totally empathize with that. I know the space has meant a lot to you, and I know that it's hard to find like a nonprofit that's willing to rent out a beautiful space. I can also hold the truth that like this building is visibly decaying. Sandstone's not a great building material. I'm not inclined to believe that the Presbyterian Church, who I'm not a part of, but my best friend is Presbyterian, and I know it's a super democratic and socially oriented church. I'm not inclined to believe that this is a simple case of the Presbyterian Church abandoning their duty to sort of serve the community. I see this as a very difficult series of decisions that need to be made. I think we can all mourn without sort of having to dump financial hardship onto the responsible party, which is the Presbyterian Church. I support the sort of initial conception of this, like churches are not just buildings, they are sort of the people who convene in them, the people who make the community. I'm not necessarily willing to sort of demonize a group of people for what is a beautiful building that meant a lot to people.
Wow, I guess I have to respond to that. I'm Don France. I'm a producer off Broadway, general manager on Broadway, executive director of nonprofits. I'm a member of the church. I came to the church with the full passion to try to save the church and turn it into a performing cultural institution. And I led the renovation of the church into performing arts spaces and rehearsal halls. There are 3 performing arts spaces, literally, and a few rehearsal halls. We lived up to our obligation, and I want to say you're welcome to the community, because for 5 years of legal residency by the center and 3 more years, we provided the space at less than $3,000 a month to the center to operate while they build a fund for the renovation. In the 5 years, They gave $0 to the fund for renovation, not able to do it, not able to turn any kind of equity back to the church. $3,000 was given to them, and the rents paid for their staff to operate it, but nothing came back to the church. So I appreciate that you love all the cheap space, but they had to sell it cheap because, number one, it would not get equitable, fair prices. I brought in my theater associates, managers, producers to try and do work there. The space is terrible. There's no heat, there's no light, the sound intrusion, both from the sirens outside and between the spaces, prevents multiple shows going on at one time. So again, you're welcome for the space because it was given nearly free. The church is bankrupt. We wish we could save it, but we gave it a fair shot. We can't.
Hi, good evening. My name is Austin. I was born in this neighborhood, and apparently I haven't been here as long as the sidewalk shed around the church. I don't know if they're football fans here, but that sidewalk shed around the church has seen something that I haven't. The New York Jets win the AFC East. That's how old it is. And I wanted to put something into perspective because I am learning about this story. I realized that this isn't the first threat or the first possibility of redevelopment or demolition. It's the fourth. 2004, 2007, 2009. Those were all proposals for demolition and redevelopment. That third one is part of what prompted the landmarking of the church. And I don't say these words lightly, but barring the financial realities and the situation they're in, the case for landmarking West Park Presbyterian Church in a neighborhood where almost half the properties are landmarked is among the strongest in the neighborhood. I don't have to go through the architecture. I don't have to go through the social justice and charities and programs that they've had. Everybody else has done it. But the case is bulletproof. And it's for that reason why it's kind of depressing that we're in the situation that we're in right now. The financial struggles have been known for the better part of 2 decades. They were known when the church was landmarked, and there were promises and commitments made, not just by the LPC, but by the community, by the council, by advocates. And that was in 2010. There was promises for commitments to help them out. 12 years later, that would be 3 years ago, and then a hardship application is being filed. We should have never gotten to this point, regardless of if it was neglect, if it was got too far out of hand, if it was unkept promises. There should not have been a situation that we find ourselves in. Whether or not we accept the hardship application, I just have one ask: have a plan. No more promises, no more commitments, no more market rate housing proposals that are too much for the housing crisis. Have a tangible proposal at hand for the church. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next panel is Brian Baker, Clyde Aberman, Emily Kahn, followed by Chris Miller, Tariq Pooler, I apologize, Pulamiro, and Daniel Rivera. Emily, please begin, and I'll plan to. The next panel, Chris, Tariq, and Daniel, if you guys can come down and keep it moving. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Emily Kahn. I'm an Upper West Side resident in the West End Park Collegiate Historic District, and I'm a professional historic preservationist with a background in preserving historic sacred places as the ongoing home of active congregations. I'm here speaking on behalf of Preservation Alumni, of which I am president. This is the Friends and Alumni and Community Group of Columbia University's Historic Preservation Program, which is the oldest and first in the country. Please note I am speaking on behalf of PA and not any other organizations with which I am affiliated personally or professionally. I've had the privilege of being involved with hosting events with 3 nonprofits at the center at West Park. And I look for event spaces constantly that we can afford, especially in an economy of losing funding, losing staff members, et cetera. This is a rare historic space where the nonprofits working every day to preserve our neighborhood and the city at large can still afford to host events. Our constituents want to go to historic places and this is one that they want to go to and can go to. I am also a professor of historic preservation at the New York School of Interior Design, and I was teaching about the landmarks process earlier today. Without prompting, one of my students, who has no background in preservation at all, said, "What about that church on the Upper West Side?" And we proceeded to have a conversation about this. The students were all very invested in the landmarking of the church and its future. This is showing that the emerging generationists of preservationists and Upper West Side residents, we want this space. We want it for a long time, and we want it now. Thank you.
It's Chris, Barrett, and Daniel. They'll be followed by Julianne Hoffenberg, Lisa Brodheim, and Charlotte Pine.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Rivera. I'm the pastor of the First Spanish Presbyterian Church in Brooklyn. I'm from Brooklyn. I'm here to support the application of hardship for the obvious reasons that the commitment that have been made to the presbytery is to continue the mission of West Park. The proceeds from the sale of the property will represent fresh opportunity for institutions such as my church to build communities, to training, ESL classes, job training, providing tools for empowerment of women, education of individuals and families, applying for citizenship, mental health, basic training for civil responsibilities, all in advance of the common good of everyone, everywhere in New York City. In my church, we are engaged in civil society, in teaching young people to respect the law, keep our prison population down, teaching our children to tell the truth. We, the impact of the sale of this house of worship, can have dozens of other houses of worship positively impacted, and the role this house of worship will continue to play a role in the future in other communities throughout New York City for years to come. The mission and the hardship application, we believe, will be sustainable for many, many years. We are not selling a house of worship. House of worship will continue as a movable feast throughout the city. Anything good happen anywhere in any borough will impact New York City and all its boroughs. Everywhere you go, we are one city, one community. This application, the social justice and houses of worship, are part of the core of all faith traditions in New York City. To conclude, I urge this commission and this board to prayerfully think, to put what you heard tonight and may you hear in the future, emotions and numbers in perspective, and make an informed decision. Thank you.
Thanks. My name is Chris. I live on 84th Street in Broadway, 2 blocks away from West Park, and I'm so proud to be an Upper West Sider. I love this neighborhood. I'm a musician, and I'm also a Presbyterian who has struggled to find my religious community in the years since I moved to New York. Excuse me, thanks. I want to say at the outset, wow, that is much louder, that I don't presume that my needs or preferences are more important than anyone else in this room. I can't come up with a justification for why that should be and why, but I would expect the same treatment from my neighbors. So I can't presume to know better than the building owners what should happen to it. Why should my feelings or anyone's get to be above theirs? Having said that, I can also clearly see how their decision would benefit me, bringing new amenities, a worship space, and community. When I look at West Park Presbyterian now, I don't see a congregation that I can join. I certainly don't see the special character of this neighborhood. I see ugly scaffolding and flyers blocking a building that I cannot use. But I also see an opportunity to create a new landmark there, a monument to the architecture of this neighborhood and to our never-ending effort as cities everywhere are constantly modernizing to make sure that New York remains the greatest city in the world.
I haven't been to one of these meetings before, but I've come to understand how they often go, and indeed how this one has gone. Those with a few passionate people attend, those who have time to devote to their personal wants beyond the community's needs. And so I am here, I want to make sure that this board knows that the voices in this room do not represent the whole of the neighborhood. I would benefit immensely if the board were to grant West Park Presbyterian's application. And I'd be grateful if you did. And I promise you that I am not alone in this. Thank you.
Excuse me, please.
Hi. My name is Derek. I'm a member of the church since 2006. So I'm an artist, musician. So we're doing a lot of art show and music festival, concerts in the church. So we have a team, members of the church. And I don't understand the people who wants to preserve the church. You know, looks like they're blind. So they show the church is very weak. Any moment, the roof might be collapsed and kill the people inside. I don't understand people who saying preserve the church and don't put any money to build nice construction and hold the roof. But church is very weak and might be collapsed anytime. And guys explain everything what's going on. And then the center wants to use the church and get money, and that's all. But I'm an artist, I'm a musician, and we're doing a very good show. You can come October 11, we provided West Park International Music Festival, which is every year we're doing, and we're doing the pop-up show. I'm the curator of pop-up show. Some people say pop-up show, someone do. I'm doing the pop-up show every month. I'm organizing all the artists West Park. So please understand, church is very weak. We need a new building. We need a nice building, what I saw on the picture. So please understand, and church needs to rebuild new building.
Thank
Thank you very much.
I've just been informed that we need to be out of this building in 9 minutes, so unfortunately,
We're not going to be able to take any additional testimony. I want to outline again, there will be another meeting on October 29th, but if you want your testimony to definitely be examined by the committee, please email it to mn07@cd.nyc.gov or submit it via the Google form that we posted. Thank you again for coming. Thank you for being respectful. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Okay, thank you all.